Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. Prices of finished petroleum products have witnessed some decline over the past weeks on the international market. Some critical ingredients that influences the price of the pumps, that is the Ghana cedi, has also been stable over the past 1 month. So why are consumers not witnessing that significant changes at the pumps or reduction? One can say that are consumers being shortchanged? Again, how has the sector fared for the first half of this year? And what about the outlook? Does it seem to be that favorable? Well, on PM Express Business Edition, we'll be looking at pricing of petroleum products in Ghana today. Are consumers being shortchanged? And also, we'll be looking at how it has fared for the first half of this year and what should we be looking forward to in the next half of 2023. My guest will be Abbas Tasniti. He is head of economic regulations at the National Petroleum Authority, and also George Wiafe, chief executive of the Association of Oil Marketing Companies, and Duncan Amoah. He is the executive secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. These distinguished persons are going to join me in studio and Zoom as we dissect and talk about petroleum sector, which matters to you and I as well. I remember that PM Express Business Edition is brought to you by Cherry Tree Properties. We develop spaces through though we are going to occupy them ourselves. Syntax tanks, it's strong and it's tough. Alumbo beaters experience greatness in every moment. And the Ghana AIDS Commission. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we throw more light on the petroleum sector. I remember that PM Express Business Edition is brought to you by Cherry Tree Properties and Syntax Tank. No matter your water needs, Syntax Tanks has all you need. Syntax Tank is first to introduce double layer tank, and now you can have as many layers as you want. Syntax Tank is the first to introduce white inner layer tanks in Ghana. We now introduce to you the customer space order. It lets you order any color or size or preference. Syntax tank gives you the longest warranty of 7 years, which no other tank gives you here in Ghana. So whether you want what I want to consume, the size of your project demand, choose a Syntax tank. We have agents nationwide. Call us on 0244 335 168. Or shop online at syntaxgh.com. Syntax tank, a year strong, a year tough. Charity Properties desires our wishes. Beauty is a promise of happiness, but passion is everything. Thinking about buying a new home? Talk to us. We build with passion, and that is a Saloon Square new gated community development at Sakumono, developed by Charity Properties, one of a kind and well-planned luxury that you would never experience. Contact us on 0553 662 366. Charity Properties, sophistication and class. And these are our sponsors on PM Express Business Edition. Today, we're talking about petroleum pricing and whether you as a consumer you're being shortchanged. We've seen some of the indicators being fairly stable, but why we don't see the reaction at the pumps is that there are too much taxes on this petroleum products or not. Well, Duncan Amoah, he is the executive secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. He is here with me in studio. Abbas Tasniti, he is economic regulations with the National Petroleum Authority. And Mr. Ajimandia is the chief executive of the Association of Oil Marketing Companies. Join us via Zoom. Distinguished gentlemen, I thank you so much for it. But let's get some understanding. Anytime you drive to a service station and you get a liter of petrol or diesel, these are the things that actually ramps up the cost of it. And this, and not this one, but actually when you look at the other ones in terms of the graphs, as in when it comes to the build-up on the prices and the cost, you see that you are paying some margins and taxes and all the rest. And that's what built up to that liter when you drive to a service station to get petrol. But some are saying that, are we having it too much? And how are these inputs actually impacting on all these things? So let me not talk much about this, and let me bring in the head of economic regulations to get more details on that in terms of the build-up of petroleum products, in terms of how these costs ramped up for you as a consumer. Now look at diesel. Looking at later between 11 and 30 Ghana cedis. Petrol is also going between 11 Ghana cedis, 50 pesos, and 12 Ghana cedis, 30 pesos. Now, let's look at the taxes and margins on it. We have the energy debt recovery levy, we have the road fund, energy fund levy, price stabilization and recovery levy, sanitation and pollution levy. We have the energy sector recovery levy. You're paying about 20 pesos on that. Special petroleum tax. You have the primary distribution margin, bust margin, fuel market margin, marketers margin, and dealers and retailers margin, of course. And just to give you a fair idea that each liter you have all these things being wrapped on it and all those things. But maybe I am not the expert, and let me let the expert talk on this. And Abbas Tasinti is head of economic regulations at the National Petroleum Authority. So help us and break it down. If I drive to a service station just to get a liter of diesel, what goes into the cost component of that liter? And maybe you will help me as and why.
Okay, thank you very much, George, and thank you very much, and welcome to your cherished viewers and listeners. I think you mentioned some of the taxes, and the levies, and the margins in the price build-up, but that's just that's a few of the components of the price build-up of petroleum products. The price of petroleum product is made up of the world market price. So if you look at an oil marketing company today, they go to the importer, whom we call the BIDEX, the bulk import, distribution and export companies. These import the products from the world market. They pay price on the world market for them. They have to ship these products down to Ghana and then incur several costs, including storage, lab analysis, several other costs. And then, as you are aware, they buy these products in dollars. So they have to convert the price into cedis. So the price at which these importers sell the product is what we call the ex-refining price. Now, if you look at the price of pump at petrol at the pump today, which is around 12 cedis, 30 pesos for, let me say, the top 3 marketing companies. As we are aware, the prices vary from company to company because of the price regulation. But the highest you see on the market is the 12 cedis, 30 pesos by the top 3 companies. If you take this price, let's take petrol, for example. The ex-refining price, which I explained to you, is the world market price and the cost of getting the products landed in the depot before the oil marketing companies pick them. It forms 73% of the price. So the taxes and the levies, which you mentioned, forms 15%. I think if you can show that graph, the share of components in the price build-up. So that forms about 15% of the price for petrol. And for diesel, the same taxes and levies forms 15%. Now we have margins in the price build-up. You mentioned a few of them. The likes of the primary distribution margin, the bust margin, the fuel market margin. These are statutory margins. So there's a graph we have done that shows the share of the components in the price build-up. So these statutory margins form 9% of the price of a liter you pay today. And then you take the distribution margins, which goes to the marketers, because as a business, they also incur a cost. They build filling stations, and theirs forms 3% of the price. So you can clearly see that the large chunk of the price of petrol you pay today, which is about 73%, is the ex-refining price, and that's the cost of the product itself. So this is the breakdown. Now, you mentioned why are prices where they are today, what is causing them to be where they are. So this is the graph I was talking about. So you can see that if you take petrol, that's the 12 cedis, 30 pesos. 15% of that is the taxes and levies. And then the extra.
So we have taxes constituting about 15%
exactly
of the price per liter.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. Just go ahead. Just explain something.
Yeah. So the 73%, as I explained, the ex-refining price.
And that is the price at which they are getting the product landed at Tema or Takrady. Exactly. And these are finished petroleum products. Finished petroleum. This is not crude.
Yeah, so petrol has a price on the world market. Diesel has a price on the world market. As we all know, crude is a product that will go to the refinery for it to be refined for you to get the petrol and the diesel. So this ex-refining price consumers are not familiar with the ex-refinery price. They are familiar with the pump price. But the oil marketing company buys at the ex-refinery price.
Yeah.
Now, the volatility in prices mainly comes from the ex-refinery price. And as I said, the world market price and the exchange rate, these are the two key variables that keeps our prices moving every now and then. So we have a graph that shows the relationship between the world market price and the pump price we pay here. So if you can show us a graph showing the relationship between the FOB price and the ex-pump prices for the first half of this year, you would see that they move in the same direction. So when the world market price, so this is that graph, so the FOB price, which is the world market price, and the ex-pump price, the pump price is what you pay at the pump. So you would notice that the FOB price and the pump prices move in the same direction. When the world market price rises, our prices in Ghana will also rise. They respond to it in the same way.
And help us. So the yellow and my colors are right, orange. That's the
ex-pump price in Ghana.
The ex-pump. That is the price at which I pay when I drive to maybe a Duncan service station. That's the price. Now the blue and the gray is what?
So the world market. We have just picked two products, petrol and diesel.
Yeah.
So the blue line is the world market price for petrol, and the gray line is the world market price for diesel. So they are down there in dollar per metric ton. And then the yellow and the orange, as you said, is the pump price for petrol and the pump price for diesel respectively. And these are in pesos per liter.
So what you're trying to explain to me that any time that there's a correlation between the price we pay for these finished products and what we pay at the service station.
Yes.
But it appears that is not the situation. So because some might argue that there have been instances where prices are dropped, but I don't witness that at the pumps.
So that's exactly what we are using this graph to show. So the graph shows the numbers and how they relate to each other. So what you don't see here is the exchange rate. Like I said, the world market price or the ex-refinery price, the key components there, which make the price move every now and then, is the world market price and exchange rate. So this first graph is showing the relationship between our ex-pump prices and the world market prices. And we can see that to a large extent, they move in the same direction.
To a large extent.
Yes.
Is this based on the data that and I'll be bringing in JoyNews, so now I'll get to the consumers. This is what the OMCs are reporting to you.
So this is, as a regulator, we do our own market survey. As you are aware, because the government, because we've deregulated prices, government does not subsidize prices. And that's why you see the prices moving in the same direction as the world market prices. Another component in the price at the pump, what we've just shown is the world market price and the pump price. Now we would have to show the second graph that shows the relationship between the world market price, the pump price, and the exchange rate as well. So the exchange rate also plays a factor. So there will be times a few times when the world market price may move in a certain direction and the pump prices may respond in a different way because of the combination of the exchange rate. So if, let's say, the world market price has not moved as sharply, but our exchange rate depreciates sharply, that will also have an impact. So this graph shows you the relationship.
And help us, because there are some color codes here for our viewers who have a challenge. Just run us through these color codes and the movement here.
So same way, the gray line shows the exchange rate, and then the orange and the blue show the pump prices. So in this case, the gray line is the price for diesel, and then the exchange rate, that's the gray line. And then the blue and the orange are the price for petrol and diesel. So you would notice that similarly, they also move in a similar direction. As the exchange rate depreciates, the pump prices respond to it, and as the exchange rate appreciates, the pump prices respond to it. So I'll just use these graphs to show you that the pump prices, the price you and I pay at the pump, they respond to the changes in the world market price and the exchange rate. And this is because prices are deregulated, and the market also responds to what happens on the world market.
Interesting. Let me bring in Kwekwa Jimandia. He's chief executive of the Association of Oil Marketing Companies, the Shells, the Total, the Gulls, the Star, and all the rest. This is data. Some are saying that data doesn't lie. But also, some people are saying, when I sometimes go to the market, the service station, I don't feel the impact of these variables going down and me benefiting as a consumer. And that's where sometimes in the past, people might say that there's a cartel, they are managing prices and all the rest. Mr. Jimandia, thank you so much for joining us on PM Express Business Edition. And for those who would argue that even though these are the variables that impact prices, they sometimes have a funny feeling that, listen, there's a cartel out there, among some of your members that they are managing prices. That even when all these variables have dropped, we don't feel that corresponding impact on prices at the pumps.
Thank you, George. It's amazing what people say they are not feeling. And if you look at the price, Abbas is over there, but you realize that there's a big variation. Sometimes some of them are even small, like 1 peso, but that's a variation. You see them just so we have a market which is very, very competitive. And so you see there's only a marginal price that you see, not 1 peso or 2 pesos, not half a peso. And it shows the variation which we are having. And the only thing is that we need to constantly get the consumers aware that, yes, we have that. And people are tied to certain places. If you ask them, they tell you that they can easily go with set prices. So we are, for the fact that there are no variations, no holy truth. I mean, we have a lot of variation. And this is a very competitive market. I mean, everywhere I've been, even Kenya and elsewhere, and those people come around here, they see our market as being very dynamic. I mean, there's variation in the pricing. No matter how imperceptible that one could be, you could see that there's variation. So we really, for cartelism, I wonder what we are talking about. Because there's nothing to show that there's only, we may rank them at a high price group and low price group, but there's a variation.
But Mr. Deere, I raise this cartel argument because there have been instances where, and I don't want to mention names. Let me even restrict myself to the top 5.
Remember
where a player is waiting for the other to price before they move. I mean, if the variables point to a reduction, why do I want to wait for A to move before I move?
Oh, that one is lagging. You can't say it's a cartel. I mean, it's also part of the competitive strategy. I mean, it's lagging, but that does not amount to cartelism. Cartelism, real cartelism will show that everybody's pricing the same. Whether even it's 0.345 and all they're saying 0.345.
But Mr. Deere, sorry to cut you in, because when they move, you realize that these top firms all are quoting the same price. But the other players, they have different prices. And that's why I made that argument about the fact that it appears that some of these top firms are negotiating on prices on what to sell to me as a consumer. Mr. Dave, you can hear me? Okay, so we had a little bit of a challenge there, but I'll come to you. Let me come to Duncan on the part of consumers. I mean, from an uninformed position, there's this perception out there that consumers are being shortchanged. I mean, am I right? You know, you share in the same thought, because someone's saying that. It looks like we've forgotten about inventory here, but how did some of the OMCs are quick to move when prices go up or there's a little FX challenge, but are slow to move when some of these variables are going down?
You see, George, you have every justifiable reason
to make an uninformed.
No, it's informed. It's informed, and I'm sure our history and the data will point this out. You were making reference to the top 3, not even 5, the top 3. There's been instances where, observable instances, where one would come with a very high price, then another comes with a certain price code, and then they drop to that price.
Yeah.
You see,
there was an instance when OMC changed prices like thrice in a day just to mark up with the other.
So it might not necessarily mean that they sit in one room to decide prices for us, but we call that shadow pricing. Okay. You need to, watch what I'm putting out, so you can also set your prices. Meanwhile, we may be picking the products, with different variables or under different, conditions. Yeah. I could be paying cash, you could be getting it for credit, right? Yeah. I could probably be getting my Forex or FX a bit cheaper. You probably have to pay a lot more because you're on the open market. So whatever the issues are, we would expect the big 3, right, to at least show a certain semblance of competition. This issue where they all aggregate, they quote virtually the same prices.
Yeah.
It doesn't give the consumer, and mind you, the top three, between them is about 50% of market.
Yeah.
So if you take just the three of them, 1 in 2 of every consumer will probably buy from them.
Yeah.
And they don't give the consumer that benefit of the deregulated regime where one is quoting 12.3. Okay, I can do 12.28, right? Yeah. Even if it's 2 pesos. But as it stands, they would usually look up to the bigger player and set their prices. This doesn't give us the confidence to want to believe that they are working independently. Yeah. Deregulation says that sit in your boardroom, decide per your numbers, right? Per your, the number of staff you have, your overheads, the number of outlets you have, your expenses generally, and how much you land in the product for. What terms you even have with your supplier might differ. Yet the big three specifically, I am wondering if you could cite a specific instance where any of them have differed, for both petrol and diesel in a single window. Yeah. Once a certain price comes, sometimes one of them will come earlier, the others would probably put a price, then the others will drop. Sometimes, I don't get it. That probably will be one of the few downsides we have for this deregulation program, because you don't see that competition that you would want.
Do you think it's working?
If you check the lower tier, the smaller OMCs, you get every confidence that they are setting their prices independently. Yeah. Because between 3-4 of them, you would find 4 different prices altogether. Yeah. But the big three, no. Sometimes not a peswa. Sometimes they will quote the same for petrol.
So for you look at these big market players and it raises questions about whether the deregulation program is working when it comes to price deregulation policy.
Exactly. And as to whether the NPA is taking note of the shadow pricing, regime. Because it looks as though the boardrooms are the same, number of staff same, overheads same, landing cost same. Terms of whatever with their suppliers same. It cannot be. We need to see some variation.
Abbas,
I'll be happy to hear what...
I know that we've moved away from regulating prices, but there's a cap that they're supposed to work within. With all these concerns, I believe that the NPA is aware about some of these concerns and whether they are educated concerns or uneducated concerns. Help us out.
Yes, I'm happy this discussion has come up again. I think Duncan calls a shadow price in his own terminology for it, but that's where the regulator comes in. The regulator is there to assure that the consumer gets value for money. With deregulated prices doesn't mean that the regulator does not have an oversight over what happens on the market. It is for that reason why the oil marketing companies and even the bulk import, distribution and export companies are required to submit their prices to us, for us to ensure that every price you see out there has been computed in accordance with the prescribed petroleum pricing formula. Even though we do not set a cap that companies are supposed to not price beyond. The market is free. Companies are supposed to set their price based on their own economics and their own cost of doing business. But we, as a regulator, every window, we do our own analysis. We also estimate and project prices. We do not publish just for a reason, because once a regulator publishes a price, the market is likely to follow that. There have been several. So what we do is we compute our prices, looking at the numbers on the market and the reality on the market, and then check how the marketers also set their prices. Now, consumers should have been worried if, as a regulator, we realize that there's a huge disparity between the price, what we project, and what the market does. If you see the numbers from our projections and what the market does, they are very close. Sometimes the market is lower because of the competition. You would want to ask, how would you think someone is overpricing, or maybe the consumer is being shortchanged? Then we'd have to look at the numbers. That comes up with the numbers. I think Mr. Ajimandi was trying to make a case about that.
We lost now, it. I'll go back to you.
Yes, so if you see the market, you can see that the markets, the companies are clustered in a certain way. The top three have very strong, similar brand strengths, and therefore they compete amongst each other. And there's another layer of oil marketing companies who also, you realize that their prices are also very close. I don't want to mention company names, but if you monitor the market, you will notice that there's another cluster of companies who also price very closely to each other. They compete amongst themselves at that level. Then there's another category who also compete, who are the lower end. So you look at the top 3 whose overheads may be higher than the smaller companies, and therefore their price may vary. Now, the top 3, there's nothing wrong, actually. There's nothing wrong with one company looking at another and pricing similar to them. Like I said, their brand strengths are very similar. And therefore, I think even if you look at this particular window in which we are, I'm sure you noticed that one of the top 3 had a higher price than the other 2. Yeah. But with time, they also adjusted because clearly if you have the same brand strength and you decide to stay up, consumers are very sensitive to price. And if our brand strengths are very close, consumers may move to the other competitor, and therefore they appear to price similarly. But when you look at the margins, we do analysis of their margins because they buy at different prices from the importers, and then the price are the same at the pump. Their margins are not the same. So if they were to be a cartel, I think we have to also note that cartelization is wrong. Our act frowns against cartelization. That's why we also review the prices. We do not close our eyes to the price on the market. So we want to assure consumers that the price you see out there have actually been done according to, if you should see even some
if I get from you, as far as you're concerned, there isn't any quote catalyzation in the industry.
Not at all. It's just
these
like you
players
said,
are all working within the bands that they are supposed to operate.
So I want to correct that. We do not set a band for them, but we review their price just to make sure that if you bought at A, and this is what you've added. Whatever margins you've added to the price must be realistic. If we think the margin you've added is not realistic, we invite you to justify that. But you see, we have a very, Mr. Ajimandia made mention of that. Our market is so competitive. There are even times when I'm sure you've heard some of the companies complain about the uncompetitive nature. I think when we did the price regulation policy review last year, one of the major issues that came up is price undercutting. A number of them even believe that the price out there are supposed to be higher than they are. But because of the level of competition, some of them are forced to sell at prices that are not competitive. So that's a major concern, which there will be proposals that should the regulator set a price floor, which people should not go below.
And I think that there's an argument about even the number of players. And I remember recently there were proposals and there was a committee set to look at the whole licensing thing again and what is the latest on that. I'll be coming back to you. But I saw a data somewhere, and I'll be coming to Mr. Ajimandio on that one, whether unverified or verified. It appears that the pricing mechanism that some players are adopting is working. There's been some shifts among the top 4, and I don't want to mention names, where a big player is now losing out to another entrant that has been very low on price. And it tells you that where lies this whole argument about overheads, and I'll be coming to Mr. Ajimandia. Again, the little economics I did about the economies of scale, the larger you are and all the rest. And Duncan, you want to make a quick point? I'll come back to you whether it is verified or unverified. And this whole idea about the competitive nature of the industry and too many players and whether these players are just not making profits and they are just existing in the industry. Duncan, quick one.
You see, George, there's an observable trend, and I would reiterate that there have been windows that you would find some of the lower tier OMCs sell at sometimes as high as 50 to 1 Ghana cedi variance with the bigger 3. Sometimes it leaves you wondering, are they picking products, from sources? Because in petroleum, Abbas would agree, 10 pesos is a lot, 20 pesos is a whole lot. Where you have a price variation and it's up to 1 Ghana cedi, for a window, just like you mentioned, one of the newer entrants to the top 3, as we speak, they are believed to probably be the second or third largest by volume.
And one big player has lost.
Exactly. So, and
consumer
are price sensitive.
Price sensitive.
They are. We are.
I mean, when I drive, let me confess, when I drive to a service station, I'm looking at X amount of money, whether my tank could be filled or not. So I only realized that, so after all,
you can get it cheaper here. Sometimes
I'm realizing that, the 500 or even 1,000 I used to buy is no longer filling the tank. So that is when I realized that I am actually losing. But now George, there are people who are combing around.
So George, that's the point we've been making about the price regulation policy as a whole.
But Abbas, you didn't let me land.
Okay, let's wrap up.
Abbas didn't let me land.
I need to bring in
the point again is, if you have a price differentiation in one window between the top tier and some of the middle and lower tier OMCs, and it's 1 Ghana, you end up wondering whether economies of scale really comes to play, because the top tier OMCs, you and I would want to believe, if someone is doing 60, 80 million liters within a given, month, You would expect that at 80 million liters, even if you were making 10 pesos or 20 pesos, you will probably make more than the one selling 5 million. But in this instance, you find the one selling 5 million, 10 million at the end of the month, pricing cheaper. So maybe their overheads may be higher, but whatever it is that this new entrant into the top three is doing, is clearly a signal to the big three that you cannot continue to ride on, either our ignorance or sometimes what we don't know, and price the same. I bet if one of the big three were to decide today to go lower, right, than what the others probably price for, maybe they will break the new entrant. They will probably even...
And I'll mention the name because it was more of in confidence among the top three MDs told me that, George, at once we dropped our prices and we had the highest sale over the past 5 years in terms of volume sold. And so there was a case to be made about
I do know who you actually...
let me bring the question. Okay, cool. Is the industry profitable or you guys are struggling? Look, if you can hear me.
It's struggle.
Yeah, you were breaking up a little bit, but I was just asking that. Why are you struggling?
I'm sure Abbas will bear with.
I'm seeing a lot of cars on the road. Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello, George.
Can you hear me, please?
George. Yes, I can hear you.
Are you guys struggling?
I can hear you, George.
Are the oil marketing companies struggling? Why?
We are struggling. Look, I can tell you, beginning of the year, we had almost about 40% of them were struggling. In such that the months, we were not making anything. They're only trying to survive to make sure that they just break even. And others are even under the water now, and they are trying to struggle to come up. It's very competitive environment, very, very competitive. And in Ghana, price of goods and services are just rising just like that. And obviously, to be able to compete or to be able to survive, you need to up your skill on the type of margin that you have to put on. But we are not able to do that because it's the market. The market is so competitive that if you decide to increase your margin, obviously you increase your price. When you increase your price, you're out of the game. So it's really a tough hurdle that we have now. But be as it may, if we see we are competing in so many things. Now, I in the discussion that you ensued, I realized that we were talking about the fourth guy, but you were not trying to mention the name. But he has gone at length to try to make sure that we reduce the cost. In fact, he's doing a lot of things which I'm sure the others will also follow for a matter of time. So it's really a tough time that we've had. We wish we can go back to the 10 years ago when you used to make good business, but now it's very terrible, very terrible.
Mr.
So if you could see even the volumes that we are selling for the first half of the year, we have dropped by 4%. They have dropped by 4%.
Again,
year on year, 2002 and now.
Mr. Dia, do you think we have too many players in the industry and now the market is saturated and maybe the time has come, and I'll come to NPE, for them to take a second look at the number of players who are in this industry? Because some will say this small market, maybe we have too many players, or maybe we have moved from an era where there were some players who were just making super abnormal profits and now reality strikes now.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think everybody should be given an opportunity to be able to become an OMC, so long as you satisfy the conditions of the MPA. But you come and compete. But if competition drives you nuts, then you have to leave the scene. Obviously, you have to go. And so that there will be a survival of the fittest who can make it. But we won't say that that's the beauty of deregulation. When you have open market and people compete fairly. The only thing is that we would like to make sure that we go through this one seamlessly without having any unseen hand coming in between them. But once the regulatory practices are fair and the floor is even, obviously we all can compete. Competition is what will drive somebody out without somebody putting their hand in.
Is the regulatory environment fair for you as a player?
I think it's a process. It does not go to where we want it to be. I think it's a process. Remember, we came from a stage where everything was regulated. We moved gradually to this stage. I'm sure there's another stage that we can move. There are a lot of things that we can talk about. We can talk about the UPF. We can talk about loading at the various places and confining the zonalization and all that. But these are the things which, if they are not in place, obviously they will say that we have got a fair competition, 100% of competitive environment. That takes time. That takes time. So it's an evolution of the process. So once we are doing that, we only have to make sure that we also keep at it and make our profit. Because if we don't make anything, like if you look at the CD dollar relationship, most of the things that you see in the station, you see the pumps, everything that you see out there are all important. And obviously, to be able to place them or even maintain them, you still need the dollar component to help you. So obviously, once we are fighting on their side, hello.
You've not answered my question. My question was that, is the regulatory environment fair for you as a player? Because in answering the question about the industry struggling, and again, sorry for my uninformed question here. I see a lot of cars on the road.
Okay.
I see people driving to the service stations. They are consuming fuel and all the rest. and I ask myself, really, I struggle to believe you that a lot of your members are struggling, even though people are driving to your stations to consume products.
George, that's why I told you that if you compare year on year, 2002, 22, and 2003, even this half, we have lost volume of 4%. Our industry is basically volume driven. And we have lost 4%. And that should be enough to tell you. And the exchange rate has moved from January to date about 15%. And look at us, we're losing 4%. And you could see that if we don't do anything, we're going to be in trouble. And some people are falling off the cliff now. I know ambassadors, they will tell you. We have some of the OMCs who could not compete. They have everything. They satisfy all the requisite regulatory things, but they cannot even start.
Interesting.
The food is so expensive. And then, go to the bank to borrow money. The interest rate is somewhere else. And you don't know how you're going to get back. Now, what we're doing is a short-term planning. We are not even going on the long term or medium term. So you can see it's a tight rope that we are riding now.
Mr. Ajimandia, I'll come back to you about the bit about taxes and margins and all the rest and how that could also help you as well. Abbas, right. I mean, has it gotten to the time when NP has to take a decision on the number of players in this industry, some would say? I remember there was a committee that was put in place to take a second look at this whole price regulation program and all the rest. When is NPA going to take a decision of maybe lifting the bar? Because you look at some of the players and the service stations and all those things, GRA, they are not paying their tax commitment. They are selling these products and they are failing to pay their taxes to the state. What is the latest on this NPA?
They have to do this work. Actually, this is a committee NPA itself formed to review the whole price regulation policy and all the challenges that were mentioned. I think all the players, all the stakeholders on the committee agreed that if we are able to enforce our regulations as an authority, a lot of the problems will be solved. So I'm sure if you've seen press releases from NPA last year, if you remember last year, I think about 30...
My question is NPA doing
I'm answering your question.
Okay, all right.
If you remember last year, you saw a publication from NPA, a press release, about 30 oil marketing company licenses were withdrawn. Another 30 were suspended. So a lot is being done to make sure we clean up the system and enforce our regulations.
So have those 30 oil marketing companies had their licenses withdrawn and made sure that the service stations
30 were withdrawn.
Have been shut down?
They were withdrawn.
Closed?
They were withdrawn.
They are not operating?
Their licenses were withdrawn.
Okay.
The suspension, those who were suspended were because of certain issues. And once you are able to address your issues, then your license will be restored for you to start operation. So I think what I'm trying to say is that, like Mr. Adman, you have said, we have the requirements that you are supposed to meet to become an oil marketing company. Once you meet those requirements, the industry is free for everyone to enter as long as you meet the requirement. You cannot be stopped from meeting the requirement. But once you join, you must play to the rules of the game. And therefore, we know if we are able to enforce our regulations as we are doing, and like I said, companies' licenses are being withdrawn, are being suspended, all is in the same in line to make sure that we are enforcing our regulations. So that's something we are doing. And we believe that if we do this very well, we continue to do this, the market will be free for players to play. So that's what we are doing.
Don't you think that we have too many players in the market and maybe the bar should be raised a little bit to lower the numbers?
So I think that's exactly what we are saying the same thing. The bar being raised is making sure you enforce the regulations. Because in a market where you come and you comply with the regulations and you do the right things, if you are not making profit, you cannot stay. The market itself will kick you out. There are companies who have moved out of the market because they couldn't survive, not because MP withdrew their license. You get it? So we have to make sure that everyone is going by the rules of the game. And I think we may also have heard that MPAs are actually working on our act. Yeah. Our act has been in place since 2005. It has not been amended. So you're actually repealing the act to make sure we've had several stakeholder engagements, and it's all driving to the point that MPA has to become, we have to close some of the gaps, the loopholes we have. And the regulator has to make sure that we're able to do things better than the act allows us to do today, so that we can make sure we have a very efficient
We'll be taking a break and we'll be coming back. But from your end, what's the data tell you? Is consumption dropping? I mean, what's the data tell you in terms of consumption of finished petroleum products? Because I am amazed about Ajimendia's comments about they struggling. Maybe, yes, every business is struggling looking at the current environment. And that is a factor I would not want to downplay at all. But what is the numbers telling from your end of consumption?
Yeah, indeed, the numbers are, the MPA publishes these numbers on our website, so they are not even numbers that are hidden. Yeah. And if you check the numbers, indeed, consumption has been dropping. But there's a reason to why consumption
Why are they dropping?
I think we've all agreed here that price is very sensitive. And it's not only in Ghana, actually. If you check globally, last year, since prices started shooting up, I even saw publications from the International Energy Agency advising people to reduce consumption and ways to make sure they reduce consumption because prices have been skyrocketing. And in Ghana, if you remember, early beginning of January, prices were around 6 cedis. Today, they are around 12 cedis. Yeah. So prices have doubled. And I know people who have started using low consumption cars, smaller cars, just to make sure that their cost of fuel has reduced. And that you will see this in the consumption trend. So if you compare 2022 consumption to 2021, there was a drop. This year, we've still seen consumption dropping. So it's all because of how people are responding to the price that they consider are very high.
Now, in 30 seconds, before we take a break, I mean, are you surprised about this movement? Even though we don't want to mention it, because it appears that all of you have confirmed that prices, there's a company that has moved up because it was strong on pricing.
You see, consumption is dropping. And as the head...
Regulation at FP.
I would want to pass it through him to the government to consider reducing some
taxes.
Of the taxes so that we take a break.
I'll be coming back. This is PM Express Business Edition. We'll take a break and we are running to 10:30 because our program directors agreed that, listen, it's a very interesting discussion. We'll take a break and we'll be right back as we run this program to 10:30 as we look at petroleum pricing. We come to a lot of things good for oil program. How is it doing? The future of this program as well. We'll be right back after this break. And welcome to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about pricing of petroleum products in Ghana here. Are you, as a consumer, being shortchanged or not? PM Express Business Edition is brought to you by Charity Properties and Syntax Tanks. They are proud sponsors on the program. Duncan Amoa is the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. Abbas Atunti is Head of Economic Regulations at the National Petroleum Authority. And Kwekwa Jimandia is Chief Executive of the Association of Oil Marketing Companies. And we are running to 10:30, that is for this edition of PM Express Business Edition. Mr. Jimandia, for you, taxes is another issue that has always come up. Do you think that something should be done about it?
What we would like it to be done, I don't think we are going to get that because of these IMF conditionalities. And if you look at the IMF thing, it's when even they want us to reset the margins on the taxes to the exchange rates and the interest rates. Can you imagine? So obviously, we are not going to get anything cheaper. And for our consumers, it's going to be worse. We're going to move from this state that we think we are not, the product price is high. It's going to be higher. Because if you look at the incidence of levies and taxes on it, and as I said, we are going to put this one in the perspective of what the CD rate is or the interest rate is at any given window. Obviously, we're going to have pricing a lot. Even though this one constitutes about 50% or thereabout pricing, but what it means is still going to have an impact. But it's never going to be easy.
But it appears the Bank of Ghana has not rushed to
implement.
Mr. Jimandia, if you can hear me, I'm just saying that it appears the Bank of Ghana is not rushing to quickly implement some of these proposals. I mean, the bit about even the FX support to the BDCs, they are trying to gradually look at the alternatives before. So, really,
did you look at the IMF thing very well? You know, the next trade that you are going to get is dependent on a Ghana government doing this kind of things. And it's going to come because the Ghana government needs money. It needs another it needs the money. And obviously, it's not. So it's good that we psych ourselves up for what is going to happen. And measure ourselves and see what we are going to do about it. Because we have done a lot of analysis to realize that it's going to happen. And no matter what is going to happen. It's one of the things, the bitter things that we have to choose so that we can move on. So it's going to come.
And for you think that when these things are implemented, listen, you're really going to pay high prices at the pumps.
It is. It will be higher. And obviously, you don't expect us to maintain our margin. Our margins also go in tandem with the exchange rates and also the interest rate as it goes on. Because obviously, we are investing. And if we don't do anything, what are we going to make? We're not going to make anything. We'll not be there for even the fuel to come. So obviously, we have to streamline this kind of thing. And we have done our calculations. Saying, no, it's going to happen and it's going to be more competitive.
Mr. Jimandia, the flip side of all these proposals also has to do with the stability of the Ghana cedi. Over the past one, I mean, I'm just saying that.
But you agree with me is that not that we just implement and the Ghana cedi stabilizes. No, it will take a long while, and the other things have to be done. So obviously, at that short term, we're going to suffer for it, and that would be something that we are not going to sit down and say that we are waiting for something. No, I mean we need to be realistic. We want to have a realistic view of how the market is doing, the price will be, and we will go along with it.
Interesting. Let me quickly get your thoughts on Gold for Oil program. I remember the last time I engaged some of the BDCs, they had some concerns with it. You know, there was so much pump and pageantry about this whole program and all the rest. And some of your members even got out and all the rest. As we speak right now, from the association perspective, what is the state of the Gold for Oil program in terms of your members participating in this program?
Oh, those who started participating, they are still participating. It's just about less than 10% of the volumes that take. But for us, it's not a big issue in the midst of the things that we do. Because initially, when it came up, it was low price in such a way that we could, in the product mix situation, low price product will help you because our price will be good. You know, but as time went on and realized that the Gold for Oil price is becoming more competitive and somehow higher than what our traditional BDCs have been giving us, it becomes a net zero kind of sum game. I mean, something that you really cannot get on. But you see, so we focus our attention more on the 90% plus that we have been doing. And so we are pricing per the 90% volume that we take in addition to the Gold for Oil. But it serves its purpose at the time when we were having the high oil prices going on, because obviously it cooled the atmosphere, the prices were a little bit lower, and depending on the volume that you pick, the consumers were assured of getting the lower price mix in the whole matrix. So it served its purpose. But now, what we are witnessing with the pricing escalation and uncertainties and volatilities and all that, it's not really having a desired effect. be as it may. And the OMC will tell you that if I don't even get the 90%, I get a 10% volume. I don't keep my station dry. At least I'll get something for the station to work on. So by and large, it's come to support the system. But given the high prices now, it's not having any real effect on the consumer.
So if I get from you, it was needed then, but now its relevance really is not needed.
Oh, I mean...
Interesting. I'll come back to you, Mr. Mandia. I mean, Duncan, I mean, gold for oil. I mean, there was so much pump and pageantry about it. He's made a very critical point that it was needed then. Now it appears that it's no longer needed.
You see, George, is gold for oil meant to be a stopgap measure, or
that was supposed to be the plan initially
in perpetuity?
I don't think it was supposed to be in perpetuity.
But it's still rolling. You see, and again, some of the issues we had raised initially had to do with market share. The NPA would license the private players, the BDCs or BDECs, to go undertake a certain economic activity. Suddenly we say that the state, through Bank of Ghana, through BOST, right, should import volumes and so as to cool off the market. If you were doing that periodically, you would achieve a certain impact, because the market would then be looking forward to when you are dropping products, and price sensitivity would probably go to a crescendo. But if you make it a program in perpetuity, knowing for a fact that structurally the BDCs have contractual obligations with their OTCs, right? Some they owe, some of the OTCs will continue to supply to them anyway because they will still have to be able to recover whatever is left with these OMCs. Then the BDCs. Then suddenly government says, I'm putting in products and pay cash. One of the fallouts that we witnessed initially is that the current market setup would operate a credit, on credit basis. So the OTC would give the BDC, give you 90 days or 120 days, sell and pay me, right? Then we bring gold for oil products and say, look, pay cash. Because we don't want that scenario where you pick the product and we are chasing you for money, we don't get the money. So people had to pay cash. Now, if you are OMC BDC, who takes credit with your OTC? 90 days, 120 days, right? They will wait for you to transfer their money to them after giving you the product. And suddenly the OTC realizes you are able to mobilize cash to pay for the same product that you are taking from them on credit. There will be a little squeeze.
It brought some disruptions into
Of course,
the market.
you would expect it. So for us, it would have been very, 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 very good if the gold for oil program was being, on ad hoc basis, as and when the need arises, as and when you get to a window that, boss has stocked up products. When the need arises that boss should intervene, it would intervene, right, to cool off the market. But for us to make it sound as though the core mandate or object for which we set up BOST was to become an active trader in the market, that is not why BOST was put together. And that is not why we continue to pay BOST margin. All of us will pay BOST margin to keep BOST running. Then BOST becomes an active competitor on the market.
Quick one, Abbas. Is store debt still in the margin? Or when I was a
don't leave Abbas out of gold for oil. I want to hear Abbas. I want to hear Abbas. No, I'm interested in Abbas' take on gold for oil. Yes, we are still paying.
I think so. The simple answer to that is the store debt is being managed by the Ministry of Finance. And if you look at this is an act, so it's not for me to say whether it's...
No, I'm not trying to whether it's right or I'm just going to get that
so just to answer your
we are still paying store debt.
Remember, NPA does not manage at all.
Okay,
so
sorry.
I cannot answer that question categorically. What we know is
gold for taking
the energy. So what I can say about that is we are aware that when the Energy Sector Levies Act was restructured in 2015, the toll debt was restructured as part of that.
Okay.
And that's what has been used, converted into that's what has emanated into the Energy Debt Recovery Levy.
Yeah.
So the Energy Debt Recovery Levy, which formed the ESLA PLC, which is paying for the debt in the energy sector. The toll debt, I know what I'm aware of is as part of that. Okay. So that's just to answer that question. So maybe, like Duncan said, you need to hear me about
I'll come back to it. But again, Sajinandia raised a very critical point about the proposed reforms in the sector and what that would mean for pricing. I mean, you represent consumers. You think that the outlook is not that exciting for you and I as consumers? He's a regulator, so we can push him aside right now.
In fact, George, I don't differ from him on that point.
He's warning that, listen.
I don't differ. Because if you go with the IMF conditionality that says that the auction of Forex that you do with the BDCs must cease.
The Bank of Ghana hasn't stopped it. It has published a calendar for the third quarter.
So you see, the car would not stop suddenly, but it will ground to a stop or grind to a stop, whatever the grammar is. So let's take it from when it gets to a stop. And the reason for which Abbas and CSOs and everybody was canvassing for BDCs to be given Forex support is to ensure that their exposure to the black market is at least limited. So that they don't quote the forward FX, very high. So there's a way you can mitigate that by getting Bank of Ghana to at least commit some Forex to a very essential importation like petroleum. Then IMF comes in and say, oh, you probably have to halt that. And then again,
as a market intervention, more quote.
I don't think they really understand the downstream as much. I don't know how much they spoke to some of these gentlemen here, but if they didn't, then they've done some disservice to all of us. At the end of the day, if you also go and propose that your currency, the Forex movement, right, should also be in tune with your petroleum or fuel prices, what it means critically is that you don't even expect the government to intervene from the IMF conditionalities. The government should not intervene even if you woke up tomorrow and the city has moved from maybe 12 now to, let's say, 18, right? And for which petrol prices would need to move to 18. If there's something the government could do, government should not do it. It should allow...
But Danka, isn't there the flip side, again, about then pressure being brought on what government has to do to firmly stabilize the local currency? Because look at what has happened over the past 1 month or even 2 months. In terms of pricing, we haven't seen that sudden spike in pricing. It was all about the local, and I'll be coming to the Forex issues and all the rest of the NP. It has to do with the fact that, listen, if we take our destiny into our own hands, we can still do what we have to do to stabilize the local currency.
You see, George, the destiny we have taken, but if you do a proper analysis of the performance of your local currency, the past 20 years, you would cry. So whether it is predictable, whether it is something we can't do anything about, whether with the technocrats, whether what they recommend is what we really do or we do otherwise. If you recall when we did a redenomination of the currency,
1:1.
10 pesos was money
Drumming
or something.
50
pesos was something. 20 pesos was something. Yeah. You could pay for your transport fare 20 pesos, 10 pesos, 15 pesos. I'm not sure today 50 pesos is even enough. It tells you the level of devaluation that the currency over time witnesses, right? If we are going to peg petrol prices to the currency and insist that government should not intervene, because if you do intervene, you are going to create further debts, that you cannot probably find the financing to settle. These are very steep conditionalities that for some of us, I'm sure if they spoke to the CSOs, would have kicked against it completely, because already...
It's not today. They'll be back in town for another...
Yeah, they'll be back. And then again, if we are not lucky and the economy goes overboard, we'll go back to them for another program. So for me, I think that what they should have been more concerned about, right, is not how we manage our petroleum downstream. They should have been more concerned about how we manage our expenditure. But it looks as though we're putting clips on...
You've made this argument several times. I think that the best goal for oil program is stabilizing the Ghana cedi, and that's it.
Yeah, you see, but for how long would we be able to say that the cedi will be 12?
Yeah.
If you ask Abbas what the cedi will be in December,
I get
Abbas, are you able to put a figure to what the cedi will be in December? No, I'm not throwing my arms. Ajimendria has been...
You can take...
Yes.
That would impact on the city. There's a lot of waste in this system.
Thank you.
That you can do to still control the FX.
The IMF is not controlling that. The IMF is saying
those things are in our hands.
Yes, they are in our hands. The IMF conditionality is what Ajimendria would base on, my senior would base on, to say that, look, we could be in for very difficult times or rough times. Because,
and that's what
George,
you want.
as it is, if you get to that point where the auctioning period is allowed to fester now, ask the NPA if they can control the currency. They can't.
Let me bring
the best they could do
here. We are lucky
is to
propose.
Yes.
So code for oil program. I think it's critical to get the regulators' point.
Perspective.
And the market player, Mr. Jimandi, has made the critical point that it was needed then. Maybe it's not needed now.
So I think, again, we need to look at what really was the goal for oil program purpose, what was supposed to achieve. So it's purely based on, the Bank of Ghana has what they call the gold purchase program. It was purely based on that. Now, everyone agrees that when you look at the CPI basket and the petroleum products, one of the key items there that causes inflation. So the Bank of Ghana, which is an inflation-targeting central bank, is concerned about the rising price of petroleum products and therefore its effect on inflation. So I think everyone has been trying to see what we can do to ensure that our exchange rate is stable. Now, if you look at the graphs I showed, you see clearly that our price of petroleum products have a very direct relationship with the exchange rate. And that's how come we are looking at how can we get the exchange rate stable. BDCs, their major exposure is FX, as we've all said. They've complained about the Good for Oil program because, according to them, and which to all of us agree, that there's some kind of unfairness in terms of how they are exposed. Now, the advantage the Good for Oil program has is that it comes with certainty with FX when it comes to price petroleum products. Because you buy gold at a certain exchange rate, you either liquidate it to get dollars to pay for the oil you are bringing in, or you exchange that for oil. Now, when you are pricing that oil that has landed through that gold purchase program, you know the rate at which you are going to price the product. BDCs who are buying dollars and buying using forward rates don't know what exchange rates to use. They are worried. So the idea of the Good for Oil program from the onset was to ensure that we cover 100% of our imports. But clearly from the beginning, you cannot do that. So if you look at what Mr. Jumandia said, from the very onset, the first cargo that came under the Good for Oil program, the price disparity was huge. One advantage it brought was that it brought competition on the market. Definitely, the other players will not want to just look at you having your Good for Oil program, which is cheaper than their products, and then allow it to sit in tanks. So the market became competitive, right from the supplier side to the BDC. So the market has become so competitive, and now Good for Oil and the general market price are almost the same. Sometimes we even price lower than the Good for Oil. That's a fact. So we've had discussions with the central bank and the BDCs. The central bank wanted to know what their real concerns are, which they have voiced out that the advantage the Good for Oil program is giving bust. They want to also enjoy that. And the central bank made it clear to them that they are also concerned about that. So now the policy is that let's work together to bring all BDCs under the Gold Purchase program. And there was a meeting with the central bank last week with the BDCs. And the central bank has made it very clear that the IMF conditionalities does not really say that stop the auction for the BDCs. Now, the reason why the BDC
BOG has agreed that they are still going to roll ahead.
The BDC auction that started last year, April till date, has not been able to meet 100% of the BDC's demand. I think they've met 37% of their demand since they started. The last auction they did, they met 25% of their demand. So we are looking at how can we look the other Forex demand they have, how can we cover that? So the gold purchase program, which has shown that it has advantages, is what's going to happen now. The BDCs have been asked to come back with a proposal on how they are going to finance this gold purchase, because you need to buy the gold before you can liquidate it and give them their dollars. So now there's an agreement and there's a clarity that this is the way to go. And that's how come the BOG has given the calendar for the next auction. They are not going to stop the auction now, because if we allow the CD, the auctions have helped to a large extent to stabilize the CD. Because the uncertainty
and when they just announced even the calendar, it brought some
certainty. Exactly. So the BOG is aware of this, and therefore will not just rush to take actions that will cause our CD to start depreciating again and lead our prices to start rising again. So the BOG has made it very clear that they are in tune with bringing the BDCs under the gold purchase program. And the BDCs are happy about that.
The gold G4O
So I think
program.
we keep saying G4O program, but it's not. The whole idea is to be able to buy gold to finance our oil imports. That's the objective. Not that boss may buy it and give it to the BDCs, but even if we can get the BDCs, like I said, to also bring their CDs, it's used to purchase gold, and then it can finance their import. The boss currently has been importing products and supplying the market, so it's doing part of the market. We still have the part that the BDCs are doing. I think it's also very important to clarify that even before G4O, Boss was bringing in products and selling to some BDCs.
Okay.
Not all BDCs import products on their own.
Okay.
So the Gold for Oil program only gave them the advantage of they getting their Forex funding through the gold purchase program which the BOG has. So I think with time you would see that the BDCs may confirm to you themselves that the discussion that we've had with Bank of Ghana were very positive and they're happy about it, that they are going to go.
So the assurance from BAG is that they're not going to take any abrupt decisions that would disrupt the market.
Not at all.
Still would intervene to meet their FX need, at least for a while, before we look at alternatives that can stabilize things.
The idea is that once the gold for oil, all the BDCs are brought under the gold purchase program, then the auctions can stop. I think the concern is having different auctions, like multiple auctions by the central bank. That's what IMF is against. But it's not against the central bank taking measures to ensure that the inflation is addressed. And like I said, petroleum products is one of the key factors that leads to inflation in this country. And the BOG has made that clear. So as long as fuel price contribute to that, they are willing to support the import of petroleum products so that there's some certainty to the price of petroleum products.
Let me bring in Mr. Jumandia to try to wrap up our program. Mr. Jumandia should try and wrap up. Does some of these things comfort you as a player that the regulator says that they will still continue to take the required measures to ensure that there isn't any serious market disruptions and the required dollar support as well?
You can't take anybody serious until it starts happening. Because there might be indicators for you to drum up something. But you only have to put your head on the edge and also reprioritize your stuff and have a very good strategy to be able to stem the tide. Because the variables are many. And so, you cannot really stick your neck out on a particular issue. You only, as the approach, they also try to get, as it stands now, we don't know what IMF conditions is, what we have on pure black and white. And it's part of the conditions that we know that is way together the next range of the money that we are supposed to have. So we take it like empirically, something which is going to happen. So we started getting ourselves together. If it happens on the other side, fair enough. Then we can also survive, then we can also make sure that we play the game. So it's something that it tells you how the statistics will say the way things are moving is not really in a linear form. It's a way which is it's not really in a linear form. So obviously, you also it's said that it's very haphazard. There's no kind of thing. So you also have to wait it there and see what you can do. But otherwise, we're not going to rely solely on that, because we have been beaten before. And it makes sense too. When IMF said that let all the taxes and that, because there was a paper which they showed that our tax revenues were going down, not because people are not collecting their money, but the value was going down. So obviously, in order to get it up, we have to do some of these things. And it makes sense. It makes economic sense to do that. But it's the effect, which is the issue. And that's why we will not be sticking our neck out now. We just see unfolding events and see what we have to do. It's a real tough time now.
Indeed. Mr. Jumandi, as I try and wrap up with you in your minutes, in your final words, and even the outlook as well for the next half of the year, for you, how things going to look like, and also even to get your thoughts on the mid-year budget review, what are your expectations? And next week, we should expect a different pricing window. Are prices going to go down or they're going to go up, Mr. Ajumendia? Let me get that quick one from you first.
We have now.
It appears I was losing you.
The parameter that we have. And talking about, yes, we are back now. But what we do is that the budget has gone on a trajectory. And Ghana, the budget is going to be run by IMF. So the indicators that we have with IMF is basically that's what's going to be said at the budget. So we are in tune with it. And they said that we're also trying to find ways that we can survive on that. And it's a pretty tough territory. It's never getting easier. It's pretty difficult. Every day, things are difficult. And I tell you, the OMCs, you cannot see our way through.
Mr. Joyner, just in 30 seconds, should we expect an increase, maintenance, or a drop from next Monday, some would say?
Oh, but what we have said so far, obviously, we just rely on the vagaries of the pricing in the whole world. Is what it helps us to do that. And of course, the big factor, the big elephant in the house is basically the exchange rate factor. And once it's not stabilized, we can't really predict.
Mr. Jimendia, the city has been fairly stable. Mr. Jimendia, the city has been fairly stable. Fairly stable.
Fairly is
fairly is relative. I mean, for us, even if it's 0.01% out.
It's so difficult for you to give us what is or the margins again, or the overhead costs will wipe any reduction.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for now, but margins normally we manage the way we manage the margins. So
overhead costs.
Obviously, no matter whatever happens, we have to sell. So only our margin will be cut to a certain level, but we'll still sell because we.
We shouldn't expect anything next Monday from you guys.
Well, you expect something. There'll be a change, but I can't promise you whether it's positive or negative.
Okay, thank you so much.
Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Okay, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Duncan, as we try and wrap up, and then we expect a reduction, maintenance, because listen, I look at all the indicators and...
You see, the pricing, I don't know whether to call him Honcho. Sits in studio. Yeah. But figures we pick from them, we pick from the market equally. There won't be much change from what we are expecting the second window July, unless of course something drastic happens.
The city has been, even last month,
you are using the word stable. Ajimendia says it's relative, and I go with him. Okay. I defer to him on that one.
Shifting the goalpost again.
No, you see, they are not looking for an excuse to go up. I think that they've been fair, largely.
So our best bet is we should keep prices unchanged.
It's likely prices will be unchanged for the second window July. That's what we think. But yeah, sticking with price. Okay.
Sorry. Let's wrap up.
Finish it up. Maybe I'll wrap up.
I mean, quick for you, regulation not sticking. I mean, what should you be expecting next week from what you are seeing?
Yeah, so I think, like Duncan said, they refer to what we publish. We publish what we call the daily price indicators, and we do this to give some transparency to pricing. Like I said earlier, the key factors is the world market price and the exchange rate. And these daily price indicators we publish gives you that information, the world market price and the exchange rate. And if you see what we've published, comparing the numbers that we use for this window to what is going to be used for the next window, you see that there was no significant change in the world market price. Like you said, the exchange rate has been fairly stable. So all other things being equal. Remember that we don't control the margins. It's the deregulated market. That's why I said all other things being equal. So all other things being equal, we don't expect any significant change in price in the next window. But like we said, we don't control the margins, we don't control, exchange rate can change tomorrow. So that's why everyone is being cautious about what to say, unless you have profit and you can
if I also hold all those factors stable,
the
city stabilizing strongly.
So that's why I said all other things being equal. We publish the exchange rate, it hasn't changed significantly, world market price hasn't changed significantly. So from our projections, the prices are going to be stable the next window. But we are wait to see. What we do is that even if the prices change, as a regulator, we would look at those changes and see whether they reflect what the market is doing or not, or someone is just trying to.
In a minute, as you wrap up from you, outlook-wise, and what are some of the assurances we're going to get from you as a regulator to ensure that, listen, the consumer is protected?
So I think I've spoken about what the government is or the Bank of Ghana is doing with regards to the exchange rate to ensure stability. One other factor, which is the world market price, you don't control, but if you monitor what has been happening in the world market for some time now, I think for the most part of this year, two key factors have been controlling the prices. The US has been increasing their interest rate, and that has kept prices in check. Because as you are aware, as they increase their interest rate, it affects inflation there, and therefore prices have been low because of that. And then we are aware OPEC and its partners, allies, have also announced some cuts in supply. So whilst that's expected to push prices up, the challenges in the US or the interest rate hikes in the US has kept prices down. So this has kept prices in check. But going forward, the outlook is that prices on the world market may rise in the second half of the year. So that's what we are looking at. But we'll continue to assure the consumer that whatever the case, we'll check the prices, review them, and make sure that every oil marketing company, every importer is pricing according to what the numbers say and not cheating consumers or shortchanging consumers.
Duncan, in a minute.
The price god has affirmed Mr. Ajimendia's earlier position. It could be a turbulent second half. We don't expect it to be that drastic. OPEC is really not going to have their way. They could, but I'm not sure that with Russia still pumping, even though sanctions apply to them. And their inventories are not as recorded globally. And people are buying, but they won't tell you how much they are buying from Russia. So it has a way.
Packaging the product.
Yeah, I think I want to. Yesterday, I read something. Europe is still buying Russian oil.
Yes.
And in fact, you see, the thing about the Russian oil is that Europe has just placed the price cap on their oil. Not that they don't buy their oil. Yesterday, the news I read from Reuters, they are still buying significant. I think that recently the largest chunk of oil has gone to Europe now from Russia. So not that they banned Russian oil in total. They are buying Russian oil.
30 seconds.
So as a point, I think that the OMC should take a cue from the new entrants.
Yeah.
I would want to see.
Put the name out. The data
I would want to see them go to the new entrant and say, look, you are around 11. How do we get to 11? And then, because we want to pay less. Consumers would want to pay less to fill their tank.
Duncan Amma is the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. Abbas Asunti is the Head of Economic Regulations at the National Petroleum Authority. And Mr. Ajimendia is the Chief Executive of the Association of Oil Marketing Companies. My name is George Wiafe. I know the debate will still go on in your offices and homes about whether indeed you are being shortchanged or not. This is PM Express Business Edition. Have a great day.